At his company gala, I played our voicemail over the speakers. Then the investor stood up. My hands were so cold I could barely feel the smooth edge of my clutch as I walked behind the curtain toward the AV booth, heels sinking slightly into the thick hotel carpet. The ballroom was all soft lighting and glassware and expensive laughter, champagne flutes clinking, forks tapping plates, the low hum of money being comfortable. On stage, my husband stood under a spotlight like he belonged there, one hand on the mic, the other gesturing as he thanked people by name. He looked calm. Polished. Believable. I kept my eyes on the little black mixing board and the laptop that controlled the room's sound, because if I looked at him too long I knew my face would give me away. My phone was slick in my palm, screen lit with a single audio file. 37 seconds. His voice. The voicemail he left me at 1:14 a.m. When he thought I was asleep and would wake up too confused to do anything but forgive him. The AV guy, Miles, mid-20s, headset around his neck, glanced at me like he wanted to ask if I was sure. I nodded once, small and sharp, because if I tried to speak I'd start shaking in a way I couldn't hide. I plugged my phone into the AUX input with fingers that didn't feel like they belonged to me. A quiet pop came through the booth monitor. My stomach lurched. The stage mic picked up my husband's laugh at something someone shouted from the front table, and it drifted up into the booth like a reminder, he was still in control out there. I leaned closer to Miles and whispered, "When I give you the signal, play it." My voice sounded too thin. Miles swallowed, eyes flicking toward the stage and then back to me. "Okay," he mouthed. It was a Thursday night, the kind of night I would normally be proud of. 6 years ago, I met Ethan when his company was still a half-built idea and he was the kind of man who wore ambition like it was a second skin. I'm Lena. I'm 34. Ethan is 37. We've been married 5 years, together 9. I'm not a founder. I'm not an executive. But I've been the person behind the scenes since the beginning, booking flights, proofreading decks at midnight, hosting people in our living room because Ethan said, it matters how they feel when they leave. I work in event planning, which means I know exactly how to make a room behave. I know where the power sits. I know how sound travels. I know that when you control the microphone, you control the story. For most of our marriage, I thought Ethan and I were on the same team. He'd say things like, "We're building something," and he would include me in that so convincingly that I never thought to question it. When his company raised its first big round, we celebrated with takeout on the floor because the dining table was buried under contracts. When he got his first real office, I picked the chairs because he said I had taste. When his investors came to town, I made reservations and smiled and listened to conversations that weren't meant for me. And because I'm good at reading rooms, I noticed the small changes before I could name them. Ethan's phone always face down, Ethan's new habit of stepping outside to take calls, Ethan's calendar suddenly full of offsites that didn't match the office itinerary. The first time I saw her, I didn't even know she was her. She was just a woman in a fitted black dress at a networking thing, laughing too hard at Ethan's jokes, her hand landing on his forearm like it belonged there. Ethan introduced her as Maya, from partnerships, and kept moving like it was normal. When I shook her hand, her grip was firm and her smile was bright and practiced. "You must be Lena," she said, like my name had been rehearsed. I told myself I was imagining the way Ethan's shoulders tightened when she looked at him. I wasn't imagining it. I found out the boring way, the way that makes you hate yourself because it's not a dramatic movie reveal, it's receipts and timestamps and little lies that don't add up. A hotel charge on our shared card labeled client dinner. A string of messages on Ethan's work phone that he forgot to clear because he'd been drinking and sloppy. A photo in a shared folder that wasn't meant to sync. And then, the thing that made it all click into place, an email from his CFO asking Ethan to confirm executive travel expenses that didn't match any trips. Ethan told the CFO to put it under marketing and then turned to me and said, "Casual, if anyone asks, that was your vendor payment." Like he was telling me to pick up milk. That night, I confronted him in our kitchen. Not screaming, not throwing things, just standing there in pajama pants with my hands flat on the counter so he could see how hard I was trying not to fall apart. Why is there a hotel charge for client dinner that's actually a room? I asked. Ethan didn't deny it at first. He did what he always did when cornered, he tried to manage. He said it was complicated. He said Maya was important to the business. He said the investors wouldn't understand a distraction right now. And then he said something that made my skin go cold, you can either be my wife or be my problem, Lena. Don't do this tonight. I went upstairs and locked myself in the bathroom because my body started doing that thing where it wants to shake and you're trying to keep it contained. I sat on the tile with my back against the tub, phone in my hand, staring at my reflection like I was waiting for it to tell me what to do. I didn't know if I was going to leave. I didn't know if I was going to beg. I didn't know if I was going to freeze in place and let my life keep happening to me. At 1:14 a.m., Ethan left the voicemail. He didn't call, he left a voicemail because he knew I would see the notification and listen, and he could say what he wanted without me interrupting. His voice was low, tired, and annoyed in that particular way that says, I'm done pretending. He said my name once like a warning. Then he said, stop acting like you're shocked. You knew what this world was when you married me. I built this. Don't you dare ruin it because you're emotional. There was a pause where I could hear him breathing. Then he said, and if anyone asks about those transfers, you tell them it was you. You're the one who handles vendors. Just say it. I'm not going down for this. I'll fix it after the round closes. At the end, he added, quieter, almost mocking, be smart, Lena. Be loyal. That voicemail was the moment the betrayal changed shape. It stopped being about sex and secrets and turned into something else, him trying to make me the fall guy for his mess. Him assuming my loyalty was a resource he could spend. The gala was part of their pitch. Ethan's company was closing a major round, and tonight was meant to be the shiny proof that everything was stable and successful and worth funding. Investors flew in. Journalists attended. The board was there. The CFO looked stressed in a way that made her face tighter than usual. Ethan's mother hugged me too long and whispered, you must be so proud, and I smiled because it was easier than explaining that pride and nausea can live in the same body. I wasn't planning to make a scene when I showed up. I told myself I just had to get through the night. But then I saw Maya at Ethan's table, in a dress that matched the branding colors, sitting a little too close to him, laughing with his investors like she belonged in the center. Ethan didn't introduce her as partnerships tonight. He introduced her as family, like he was testing how far he could push the word without it breaking. When Ethan took the stage, he did what he's good at. He thanked people. He told a story about humble beginnings. He made the room feel like they were part of something important. The investors nodded along, some smiling, some expressionless in that money way. The kind of expression that says, convince me. And there I was, behind the curtain, with my phone plugged into the sound system and 37 seconds of Ethan's real voice ready to cut through all of it. My signal to Miles was simple, I raised my hand once, then lowered it. My fingers were shaking. Miles hesitated for a beat that felt like a lifetime. Then he pressed play. At first, the room didn't react, because people don't expect betrayal to come from the ceiling. Ethan was mid-sentence when his own voice spilled out of the speakers, loud and unmistakable, echoing off the ballroom walls. Stop acting like you're shocked, the voicemail said. Heads turned like a wave. A fork clinked against a plate. Ethan's face froze on stage, his smile stuck in the wrong place. You knew what this world was, his recorded voice continued, and I saw Ethan's eyes flick toward the booth area like he could will the sound to stop by looking at it. Maya's posture went rigid at the table. The CFO's hand flew to her mouth. One of the board members leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Then the line hit that I knew would change everything, and if anyone asks about those transfers, you tell them it was you. You're the one who handles vendors. Just say it. I'm not going down for this. There was a split second where it felt like the room forgot how to breathe. Then chairs scraped. Not one or two. A cluster. People in suits and dresses pushing back from tables, heads turning toward each other, mouths moving fast. Investors weren't looking at Ethan anymore, they were looking at the CFO, at the board, at each other. The kind of look that says, "Did you know?" The kind of look that says, "This is liability." Ethan grabbed the mic with both hands like it could save him. "Everyone," he started, voice cracking slightly, which I had never heard in public. "Everyone, there's been a misunderstanding." But the voicemail wasn't done. "Be smart, Lena. Be loyal," it finished, and the last word rang out in the ballroom like a slap. The first investor to stand was an older man in a navy suit, the kind of person Ethan bragged about having in his corner. He didn't shout. He didn't make a speech. He just stood, adjusted his jacket, and said to the person next to him, loud enough to carry, "We're leaving." Then he walked out. Others followed. Quietly at first, then with more urgency, like a dam breaking. Phones came out. People started filming. The CFO looked like she might throw up. Maya stared down at her lap, face flushed, her smile gone. I stepped out from behind the curtain and walked toward the edge of the stage, not because I wanted to be seen, but because my legs were moving and I couldn't stop them. Ethan saw me and his eyes widened like he'd just realized I was capable of something beyond being supportive. He hissed my name under his breath, not into the mic, but I still heard it. It wasn't Lena like a husband. It was Lena like a threat. I didn't go on stage. I didn't need to. The room had already heard him. The truth was already out, and it didn't require my explanation. That's the thing about audio, you can't argue with tone. You can't rewrite it with charisma. You can't say, "That's not what I meant," when everyone just heard exactly what you meant. Security started moving toward the booth. The event coordinator, a woman I'd worked with before, looked at me with wide eyes and didn't stop me. Maybe she recognized the expression on my face. Maybe she'd heard the voicemail and understood that whatever was happening was bigger than a gala schedule. Ethan tried to chase the investors, abandoning the stage like it was on fire. I watched him move through the crowd, hand outstretched, speaking quickly, trying to pull people back with words the way he always did. It didn't work. Money doesn't like surprises. Money definitely doesn't like fraud. The board member closest to the stage, Ravi, someone I'd had dinner with and smiled at and pretended with, walked toward me slowly. He didn't look angry. He looked tired. "Do you have a copy of that voicemail?" he asked quietly, as if volume might make it worse. I nodded. My mouth felt dry, but my hands were steady now. "I do," I said. "And I have screenshots. And statements. And the email where he tells the CFO to categorize expenses as marketing." My voice sounded like someone else's, calm, clipped, professional. Like the version of me I use at work when things go wrong and I need to fix them. Ravi closed his eyes for a second and opened them again. "We need to speak to counsel," he said. Then, softer, "I'm sorry. I didn't say it's okay, because it wasn't." I just nodded once. Later, after the ballroom cleared enough that the air didn't feel so thick, I sat in a quiet side room with the company's legal counsel and the CFO. My legs bounced under the table without my permission. My fingers kept rubbing the edge of my wedding ring like it was a habit I hadn't learned how to stop yet. The CFO looked at me like I was both a witness and a warning. "He told you to claim responsibility for the transfers?" she asked. I swallowed. "Yes," I said. He said it like it was normal. Like it was already decided. The counsel asked for the voicemail file. I emailed it. My sent box showed the attachment leaving my phone, and something in my chest loosened in a painful way, like letting go of a rope that's been burning your hands. Ethan called me later that night. I didn't answer. He texted. Then he texted again. The messages shifted from rage to panic to bargaining in the span of 20 minutes. What did you do? We can fix this. You just destroyed everything. Please call me. I stared at my phone until the screen dimmed. Because the truth was, Ethan destroyed it. I just stopped covering for him. I went home alone. I took off the dress that suddenly felt like a costume. I washed my face until my skin stung. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the house settling, the quiet creaks and clicks of a space that didn't know it had changed. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt raw. I felt like I had ripped open a seam in my life and now I could see all the messy threads inside. The next morning, Ethan's assistant emailed the staff saying the CEO would be stepping away pending review. The investors who stood up didn't come back. The board called an emergency meeting. My lawyer returned my call. The CFO sent me a short message that said, "Thank you for telling the truth," and I stared at it until tears finally came, slow and hot, because I hadn't realized how badly I'd needed someone to acknowledge that truth-telling costs something. I don't know what happens to Ethan's company by the time you're hearing this. I don't know how quickly a board can pull someone out or how messy it will get. I do know my marriage is done. Not because I played a voicemail at a gala, but because the voicemail existed at all. Because the man I loved was willing to sacrifice me to protect himself, and he assumed I'd do it quietly. If you made it to the end, thanks for watching. And if you've ever been in a room where someone's mask slipped in front of the people they were trying to impress, whether it was a partner, a boss, a friend, share your story in the comments. I read them, and it helps to know you're not alone when the truth finally gets a microphone.